Most insane mega project you've never heard about. I mean, like, that sounds great. Let's hear about it.
In the 1960s, the US planned to nuke Israel with hundreds of thermonuclear bombs.
Wait, who planned to do this?
In the 1960s, the US planned to nuke Israel with hundreds of thermonuclear bombs.
What AI haven't I used all my chats with? I remember that Russia used nuclear bombs in construction projects, and that some of these nuclear sites can be seen from space. Can you give me the coordinates of some of these sites so that I can look them up? Let's see. Go. We're probably gonna have to go to Google Maps. Give me addresses or something. Like, oh, I was almost able to grab that. Did I get it? I think I got that. Let's go. Okay, okay. We want satellite. Telling me that lake was created by a nuke. Another one? See, see. Okay. Gonna think for a little bit.
And Panama and Alaska.
Yeah, like they were just planning when they first found nuclear weapons. They was like early in development before they knew like the horrible radiation. Uh, Essentially like a byproduct. They were like, let's use it for construction. We need we need a canal here. Let's just blow one into the earth.
All in the name of progress, driven by a mad scientist to use the most destructive of weapons to build things, excavate canals, carve out harbors, tap oil and gas. This
Oh, I actually heard a really cool story. Let me look this up first, and then I'll get into that. Main example in present-day Russia from the Soviet nuclear is the T-grade site. T-grade site. Give me more. Involved nuclear explosion. It was a civil engineering. Exact coordinates. I think this might be what we were just looking at. Yeah. So this was made by a nuke. Where are we? Up in Russia. They were experimenting, creating valleys and rivers with nukes. This site is in a remote part of about 100 kilometers north of Perm. Note that it has some residual radioactivity, so it's not a place for casual visits. Radiation levels are elevated near the lake banks compared to background. Broader Soviet PNN program carried out 12 nuclear 122 explosions across the USSR for various civil purposes. I mean, reserves, canals, oils, and gas. Like, the US planned to do this, Russia did it, and then the US learned from Russia's mistake not to do this. Ooh, we got another one? Let's have a look at this one. Okay. Okay. Where are we? Where are we? This is Kazakhstan. Let's experiment a little bit. Let's blow a circle up here. See if we can't, like, carve up the river. I mean, I'm sure this has no negative consequences. I mean, it doesn't look like it's a populated area, but still. People drive on past it. Oh yeah, that's the lake they made with a nuke. Okay, I heard there was a out of control gas pipe in the Soviet Union. And they had to close the gas pipeway with a nuclear explosion. What was this site called? How can I look this up? Like, from my understanding, the Russians, they drilled down into like a natural gas chamber, essentially. And they didn't cap it properly. And so you literally just had natural gas spilling out into the atmosphere, except there was like there was a spark, and so it was just a giant fireball that just continued to burn for like, I don't know, like a year, maybe more. I don't remember how long it went on for. What you're referring to is I'm gonna try and say that. We're absolutely looking up a video of this because it was something to watch. Ugh. Let's go. I want the black and white video. Here we are.
Крошечный поселок, затерянный среди
Like, look at that.
песков с непонятным названием Уртабулак. Здесь, в одной из скважин газового месторождения,
Blown out well.
воспламенился фонтанирующий газ.
They're desperately trying. Like, these are the hoses. Yeah, we got people here, right? Look at the size of this, and it's just burning.
1074 дня.
The fire raged for over 3 years.
Полыхал этот факел.
I remember they managed to close it with a nuclear explosion deep
В
underground.
борьбе с огнем были применены все известные способы. Пробовали отвести газ в сторону.
Look at these people. It's just
Все
a
известные
giant
способы.
fireball shooting out
Пробовали
of the
отвести газ
ground.
в сторону, но тут же возникали новые огненные фонтаны. Укротить гигантский факел не удавалось. И тогда было решено использовать
Close the well with an
подземный
underground nuclear
ядерный взрыв.
explosion.
По наклонной шахте к газовой скважине подведен заряд.
До взрыва осталось 5 секунд. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Что же произошло?
Oh, look at the whole ground
Что же
shakes.
произошло там под землей? Ударная волна ядерного взрыва сдвинула пласты земли, которые перекрыли скважину. Вот и все. Факела нет.
The flare went out.
Осталось лишь зацементировать
Like, you gotta be so careful with this kind of stuff, man.
бывшую аварийную скважину. использовать 1074 дня. Скважин газового
Look at that thing.
месторождения воспламенился фонтанирующий газным названием Уртабулак. Здесь, в одной из скважин газового месторождения, воспламенился
Okay, let's get back to it.
Was Project Plowshare. It kept the US busy for 2 decades, burned hundreds of millions of dollars, and exploded dozens of nukes for a bright future. In the most feverish years of the Cold War, when the world got terrifyingly close to blowing itself up, nukes for peace.
Yes.
Our story
Construction.
begins with the brilliant Hungarian physicist Edward Teller, one of the key scientists of the Manhattan Project, the colossal effort that led to the first nuclear bomb. But almost from the beginning, he dreamt of destroying the world much harder. Traditional nukes, like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki ones, release energy by splitting heavy atoms like uranium. But these are rare, expensive, and the resulting bombs are difficult to scale up. So, Teller lobbied for a different approach: unleash the nuclear fire by smashing together hydrogen atoms. That would allow for bombs thousands of times more powerful. The
So, from my understanding, Little Boy was the one dropped on Hiroshima.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki
And
ones
it's-
release energy by splitting
A fission chain reaction.
heavy atoms like uranium. But these are rare, expensive, and the resulting bombs are difficult to scale up. So, Teller lobbied for a different approach:
And we have these fusion reaction bombs are much bigger, and they've never been used in warfare. Like, these have never been dropped on people or on people anywhere.
unleash the nuclear fire
Like, the scale of bombs we currently have are so much larger than those that have been used that it's kind of frightening.
by smashing together hydrogen atoms. That would allow for bombs thousands of times more powerful. The problem was technically hard, but in the 1950s, Teller solved it. The terrifying new thermonuclear bomb made Hiroshima
Like, oh my goodness, they're gonna show us.
and Nagasaki look like
Look at the difference. 15,000 tons, 20,000 tons of TNT, 10 million tons of TNT. The scale is completely different, and these decimated cities, right? This can decimate entire countryside.
firecrackers. Nuclear fire strong enough to end human civilization itself. The Soviet Union followed quickly, and a new madness for destruction took over the world. Teller was having the time of his life as he got to chase his nucleus dreams like a bomb so powerful that it would wipe out civilization in one single strike, a real thing the US actually started working on. We've told this story before if you want to watch it. And as the perfect
What?
civilization in one single strike, a
One bomb to end the world? Like, they were working on that, maybe?
real thing the US actually started working on. We've told this story
Sundial? Videos. Sun. Far back. Ooh, I like that one. Anyway, we'll finish watching this.
before if you want to watch it. And
I'll have
as
to
the
find that
perfectly
later.
sane man he was, Teller had other great ideas, like nuking the moon to show the commies who's boss.
I mean, like, that's just a good
And
idea.
if H-bombs could destroy the planet, maybe they could also reshape it. The logic wasn't entirely unhinged. Humans
I
had
mean, we've used TNT to blow open mountains for generations. You measure nukes in amounts of TNT. Maybe like it's not a bad idea if you can figure out the radiation.
Been using
aspect.
explosives for mining and engineering for centuries, and H-bombs offered the same service with much more enthusiasm at a decent cost. Why not use them to dig ditches and make holes at a planetary scale? The idea of nukes for peace was also pretty convenient. With public opinion increasingly opposed to the arms race and ever more terrified by World War III, nuclear engineering was a way to keep on testing nuclear weapons without saying you were testing nuclear weapons. So, in 1957, the US launched Project Plowshare, a bold plan to use nuclear explosions for peaceful engineering. And who would be put at the helm? Exactly. Cutting through continents. In 1956, Egypt had just nationalized the Suez Canal, a vital artery for global trade and oil delivery to Europe. So, one of the first ideas of the new Build with Nukes doctrine was to blast open a new one through the Israeli desert. On the other side of the world, the Panama Canal had long been in need of an upgrade. Scientists explored extension routes and found they would need
It still needs an upgrade. Like that, it's still having problems and they're only getting worse. Like, it's almost becoming more profitable to unload your ships in Mexico, put your cargo on trains, ship it across the small part of Mexico down there, and then reload the ships. Unloading, shipping, and reloading is almost cheaper than going through the Panama Canal. So
to remove 1.2 billion cubic meters of earth, 500 Great Pyramids of Giza. A monumental task that would cost $6 billion if done with shovels, but only $3.1 billion with nukes.
Still so much.
Time to blast open a panatomic canal. But even Teller understood that before nuking through continents, you should start small. So the first miracle of Project Plowshare would be a new harbor in Alaska. In just a few glorious milliseconds, 5 nukes with the combined punch of 170 Hiroshima bombs would carve out a 500 by 200 meter trench, opening the region to commerce and prosperity. The local communities weren't thrilled at the idea, but Teller insisted that the dangers of nuke engineering had been greatly exaggerated. The major concern was radioactive contamination.
Yes.
Canals and harbors were great, but nobody wanted them glowing with radioactivity for thousands of years. Luckily, Teller had a plan: nuking the land from below. In a nutshell, nuclear excavation works like this. You drill a hole a few hundred meters deep and place the bomb at the bottom.
Yeah.
When it goes off, the blast hollows out a cavern in the rock and flash melts its walls into magma. The molten rock pools at the bottom, the ceiling collapses, and the collapse ripples upwards until it reaches the floor, where it forms a crater.
Everything
The
falls
result
down.
is a massive hole on top, with the radioactive debris sealed under hundreds of thousands of tons of rock. With the theory looking flawless on paper, the time had come to actually test it. But before the
Don't-
government bombs
Just don't test it near people.
anything, let's get some propaganda protection, just in case. Our partner Ground News is a website and app built to help you think critically about the information you consume, a mission we fully support. They curate news articles from across the globe, adding context on political bias, reliability, ownership, and summaries that highlight what each side is leaving out. You can even compare headlines to see how bias shapes the narrative. Take this story about Finland planning to lift its ban on nuclear weapons. Some frame it as a prudent response to the state of the world, while others warn of escalation. Ground News also reveals blind spots, stories that only one side is covering, showing you what your usual news feed is hiding. As information bubbles are becoming the norm, thinking critically about the news is no longer optional, and Ground News makes it easier to do just that. If you'd like to give them a try, go to ground.news/nutshell or scan the QR code on the screen. Using this link gives you 40% off an unlimited access subscription and directly supports our channel. And now, back to Nuking for Peace. The fiasco begins. Plowshare
Just do
debuted
it.
in 1961 in the desert of New Mexico. A nuke with the power of 3,100 tons of TNT was buried.
So, this is still relatively small. This is bigger than the ones they dropped in Hiroshima. but is nowhere near the 10 million.
360 meters deep in the heart of a salt deposit. The goal was to explore a new idea to generate electricity. The explosion would melt the deposit into a pond of red-hot liquid salt whose heat could be pumped up to power turbines. A hybrid of fusion and geothermal power brought to you by H-bombs. Above ground, hundreds of officials, scientists and international guests had gathered to witness the birth of a new era. Everyone held their breath as the countdown ticked. And then, with a distant thud, the ground shuddered. Deep below, the explosion hollowed a cavern the size of over 10 Olympic swimming pools. But Teller's team had missed a tiny detail. The salt contained far more water than expected, which turned into superheated steam that massively amplified the blast. The hole used to lower the bomb had been designed to collapse and seal itself after the explosion, but the unexpectedly monstrous pressure broke through. So, a few minutes after the blast, a plume of radioactive steam erupted from the shaft, damaging cameras and instruments and bathing everyone in a strange...
Like, if it's so bad that it's damaging a camera, we're getting a fatal dose. Like, you are getting a life-changing dose of radiation if it is destroying your camera.
itchy sauna. The US government tried their best to convince everyone that things hadn't been that bad, but for some reason, the masses had a problem with clouds of radioactive fallout, even from peaceful nukes. But that wouldn't discourage Teller. So, to show the world how cool H-bombs could really be, he scheduled another test, one 30 times more peaceful. In July 1962, while Cuban officials were visiting Moscow to negotiate a missile deal that would almost spark World War III 3 months later, a thermonuclear bomb worth 7 Hiroshima nukes exploded 200 meters underground in the Nevada desert. This time, the goal was to test nuclear excavation itself and check how big the crater could get. The blast displaced 12 million tons of soil and hollowed out a gargantuan crater 100 meters deep and 400 meters across, the largest artificial crater in US history.
100 meters. That's not that deep.
But digging with nukes is tricky. Bury the bomb too deep and you'll only get a disappointing dent. Bury it too shallow and you risk launching a radioactive cloud into the sky. Which was exactly what happened. Someone had miscalculated the depth of the explosion and a plume of radioactivity punched through. Fallout was detected as far as South Dakota and Illinois, and panic broke out in Utah when radioactive iodine was found in milk. It turned into one of the dirtiest tests on US soil ever. Just one more nuke, bro. The years that followed saw more peaceful explosions and peaceful fallout. Meanwhile, Teller's proposals got weirder. Liquefy tar sands in Canada with nukes. Blast a highway through the Sierra Nevada with nukes. Connect rivers in Mississippi with nukes. But the crown jewel of nuclear dreams was still the Panatomic Canal. A legion of scientists worked on it and plans got disturbingly far. One of the top contenders was Route 17, an 80-kilometer trench across pristine Panamanian jungle that was short, flat, pretty empty, and perfectly nukeable. 250 bombs with the power of 8,000 Hiroshimas would do the job. 43,000 people across 17,000 square kilometers would still have to be evacuated, just in case. And shockwaves might shatter windows as far as Costa Rica and Colombia. But what were such details in the grand scheme of progress? So let's rewind history and press the button to see what might have happened if Teller had got his way. Ready to push the button? 3, 2, 1. Boom! The first round of nuclear salvos close to both coasts obliterates hundreds of square kilometers of pristine rainforest in seconds. A roaring success. Unfortunately, a cloud of fallout catches the Pacific winds. Weeks later, spikes of radiation are found over the Caribbean, and radioactive iodine, cesium, and strontium start to enter the food chains of both oceans. Tuna and sharks become radioactive. One option would be to stop, but to have a radioactive scar across the jungle, contamination of 2 oceans, and no canal, better push through. So a second round of blasts goes off in the central Chuganaki River Valley, only to find that the central part of the isthmus had far more clay than expected. As soon as the rainy season hits, landslides clog the new craters like a self-healing wound. The choices? leave a mud-choked glowing blister through the rainforest, or begin a colossal engineering nightmare just to keep the jungle from landsliding onto the canal. Not to mention the ecological apocalypse and the devastating PR victory that 120 megatons of nuclear peace over Latin America would give Cuba and the USSR. Luckily, in our timeline, the US blinked and began to sober up. In 1970, a final report killed the Panatomic Canal, and with it, all nuclear excavation projects. But Teller wasn't ready to let go, so he turned to nuclear fracking. Not because it made sense, but to
Aren't modern bombs significantly less dangerous in their fallout? I hear a lot about the effects of nuclear radiation from a nuclear explosion. Do modern bombs still have this issue, or has this issue been resolved? Modern bombs still produce significant. Well, I mean, that sums it up. I thought they had like significantly less radiation. Although, okay, let's wait till it gets closer. Okay. Yes, modern nuclear weapons still produce significant radiation effects from explosion, and this issue has not been resolved or eliminated. Why radiation remains a core issue? Modern weapons are thermonuclear fission primarily. Okay. Attempts to address radiation, but no full resolution. Neutron bomb. Clean design, pure fusion weapon. Bottom line, the radiation issue is not being resolved in deployed weapons. Advances focus on accuracy, miniaturization, and delivery systems rather than eliminating radioactive byproducts. In any real use, radiation would compound the blast, heat, and fire effects, killing or sickening survivors and contaminating areas for years or longer. This contrasts with the Soviet peaceful nuclear explosions you asked about earlier, which were mostly fission devices with even higher relative radiation concerns for construction projects. So fission was even a more radiation. Weapons designs face the same fundamental limits. If you want details, what's the radiation difference between a fission and a fusion bomb? Insane mega projects. Alright, well, let's watch this.
to keep Plowshare alive. Just one more nuke and I'll build the future, bro. But several explosions later, the result was ultra expensive, radioactive gas impossible to sell.
Radioactive gas. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
In 1977, after 20 years and dozens of nukes across the US, Project Plowshare was finally cancelled without reaching any of its goals.
So this
Later,
is
the result was ultra
like a
expensive,
time-lapse
radioactive
of
gas
nukes.
impossible to sell. In 1977,
happened?
after 20 years and
Or
dozens of nukes
Southern
across the
Nevada.
US, Project Plowshare was finally cancelled without reaching any of its goals. No canal, harbour or tunnel had been built. In hindsight, it's easy to see how insane the idea was. But at a time when World War III felt imminent, when kids were playing with atomic toys as mushroom clouds filled the sky, using nukes to build a better future probably did feel like a great idea. On our new channel Night Shift, we're telling dark and novel stories from history that you might never have heard before.
Let's have a look here. Bottom line. Start here. Per unit explosive yield, fusion can be cleaner in residual radiation if fission is minimized because fusion doesn't create fission products. In practice, thermonuclear bombs often have more absolute radioactive fallout due to higher total yields. The fission components, they are not radiation free. Pure fusion weapons would have almost no fallout. Okay, only minor neutron activation material in the surrounding, but remain technologically unfeasible for weapons. Both types also produce some. So both types have huge fallouts. New ones, fusion ones, actually have more fallout just because of the total higher yields. Alright. Not something we ever want to go off.